Fabulous. Okay, you guys. So I just told Kit, I was like, stop, because this is so damn good. I want this recorded. Kit and I are meeting for the first time. We've only been on a call together for 2 minutes, but I'm already obsessed with this woman. And I was asking her how she found me because she left the most beautiful comment ever on one of my YouTubes where I was feeling like so frustrated. And she sent me this comment back and she's like, oh my gosh, I've been listening to you for like over a year. And I was like, shut the fuck up. Are you kidding me? And then we went back and forth and I was like, I need to have you on the podcast. I'm going to get to know everything about you today. I have told you we only have an hour, which is so disappointing because I know I'm just going to want to chat with you for way more than an hour. Obviously, this is going to be so much value to our audience, but I'm just so fucking grateful that you're here. So I know I cut you off, but I just want this recorded because I know it's going to be gold for everyone. Like, because your story is like my story, which is like probably most everyone else's story as well. In some regards, everyone can always put themselves in the story. So go ahead. How did you find me? What situation were you in? And you guys, this isn't even about me. This is definitely going to be so good, but I know enough about this to know that like, I'm going to be so sad if I didn't hit record. So continue your story. You were a freelance writer and you were going down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, so I was working as a freelance writer and I had been for years, but I was trying to drag myself out of that money mindset where you're like, oh, I'm just a poor person. Like, I'm never going to earn that much. I'm lucky that these clients are paying me. I'm lucky that anyone wants to hire me at all. And I don't know, like, I know where I got that from, but I hadn't really realized that I could do anything about it. And then I just started, I don't know what the first podcast or first article I read about it, but there are so many of these kind of like female empowerment, female business empowerment podcasts and articles out there. And so I started I suppose that was probably the first decision, really. Like, I'm going to change my mindset about this and do something about it because otherwise my business is just going to flatline. And so your podcast was one of those that I found quite early on, I think. And then immediately, do you ever find a podcast where you start listening to it and you're like, this is where I need to be. This is exactly what I need to be listening to. And then before you've even like finished listening to that podcast, you're already scrolling through that person's other podcast. And you're like, okay, how do I bookmark this shit? Because I need to listen to that one and that one and that one. Like, even now I go back to, because I have been listening to all of your podcasts for I think about 18 months. And even now I go back.
Trippy for me to like even you would. Okay, so before we hit record for like the 2 minutes, Kitiara, I mean her full name is Kitiara, but I don't even know how to say it properly, so we're gonna go by Kit. But it's please do say it properly because I want to totally like respect that.
It's Kitiara. It rhymes with Shakira.
Kitiara rhymes with Shakira. Do not feel bad because I've been golfing with guys for like 5 years and I still forget people's names. I'm horrible with names, but Kit, I can remember. So all of that to be said, before we got on hit record, she's like, this is so surreal talking to you. It's so surreal for me to hear you say that you have been listening to my podcast every episode for the last 18 months. And this is the first time ever within the last week that we've even connected. So like, it's just as trippy for me, girl.
It's so funny because you're always like, I respond to text messages, just send me a text, tell me you're out there, tell me you're listening. But I'm still like, oh, well, no. She doesn't want to hear from like little old me over in the UK. Like, I mean, she's got much more important people to talk to. But then it was just your podcast last week. And I have been meaning to kind of like text before, but you know, you just get yourself down, don't you? And then it was a podcast last week that I was like, it just spoke to me. And I was on like a grimy bus getting to the co-working space that I work in. And it was like, you know, dirty windows. And I was like, I felt like you were talking to me directly through that podcast. And I was like, I have to do something back, which is, you know, you're sat there going, please talk to me. Like, please tell me you're out there listening, watching this on YouTube, whatever. And I just thought it's actually kind of not good for me to listen to you for all this time and then not say, hi, I'm out here. I appreciate you. Please keep doing what you're doing.
Oh my gosh. Like, yes, the answer is yes. So because you will soon find out in a moment, Kit has her own YouTube channel. She has her own like whole deal, but we're going to talk about that in a second. But the answer is yes, please do that. Because like, I promise you, when I was sitting here and if you guys don't know what episode it was my very first video solo. And like, if I could turn my computer around to show you right now, I finally figured out how to set up like my video to where it's like not going to move. And I was just having such a bad personal day. There was just so much bullshit going on. And I had to get this solo podcast done. And I've promised my team for like 2 months that I was going to do solos on video so they can cut clips and stuff for shorts and all of the shit. And I was just like so frustrated that day. So I went for a walk and I recorded this damn podcast. And in the middle, like in the beginning of the podcast, I was like, you guys, I promise you, like, I'm a fucking human. Like, I do not have all my shit together. This is so frustrating. This is so hard. Please tell me that this, like, I am not the fucking only one, because no matter where you are in the journey, whether you're day one, whether you're $1, whether you're, day 2000, $2 million, whatever it is, we all have those moments. Like, I have worked with some insanely wealthy people over the years, and I have worked with people who are starting on day one. And I will tell you, everyone is exactly the same. Like, I know when you're in the beginning, it feels like once you hit certain level, like you're never going to have those problems again. But the answer is it never fucking goes away, which is like both good and bad in some regards. So all of that to be said, thank you. Thank you for saying hi. Thank you for connecting. Like, I'm so fucking grateful that we're getting to do this.
Me too. Oh my God. I can't believe it, but I'm so glad. And every single time I've done this in the past, like, seen an opportunity, I don't know if that's the right word, but just seen something where inside myself I'm like, oh, I should do that, and then my brain is going like, oh no, don't do it, it won't, whatever, and then I do it anyway. It always works out so well.
Isn't it so good? I actually did a solo podcast yesterday, which you'll probably listen to in the next couple months or whatever it is, but it was all about trusting your intuition. It was all about like that still small voice. And I even did an Instagram post yesterday, I think it was, or the day before, or whatever it was, but it was like 6 things that will give you hope. And the number one thing, or like one of the things in the 6 was the fact that like the answers are inside you if you just listen. And Kit was on that bus, and I guess that podcast just spoke to her and she just listened. And now I'm so grateful because I did a little research on you, and you are cute as a button. I want to know everything about you because I know that this is going to resonate with my audience. Your story is fucking incredible. Like, everything from, hello, you sailed around the fucking world in a yacht for 3 years. What? You have a book, you have a podcast, you're like this ultra runner. I don't even know, like, are you an ultra runner? Are you a triathlete? Or you're a marathoner? What are you? You've qualified for like the fucking UK thing. Like, I mean, you guys, the stories is unbelievable. And she's afraid to reach out to me. I'm like, bitch, are you kidding me? What are we talking about? Like, you are such a big deal. I'm so grateful for this. Before we go on, please, Kit, tell everyone who you are, what you do, and tell everyone, aka me, because I am just so obsessed.
Okay, well, I don't even know where to begin. But to give a very, very short sum up, I've always been a writer, so I've always worked as a writer. And then when I was, for clarification, I'm now 34. But when I was 23, I want to say, my then boyfriend decided that he wanted to buy a boat and go sailing. And I was not a sailor at all, had never really sailed, get cold very quickly. But he so he bought a boat off a family friend of his who was then too old to sail it. And I was a very naive and very go along kind of girlfriend. Like, I was just like, oh yes, of course, I'll do whatever you want. And that has its benefits sometimes, and it has its downfalls, as I will talk about later, I imagine. But he bought this boat, and then, I was out of university, I was working in a not very interesting job, and I became a freelance copywriter in order for us to then take this boat and then go sailing. And it was just going to be a couple of months. For a summer holiday, basically. So he spent about a year refitting the boat, and I did a lot of work on the boat as well while I was working as a freelancer. And then we eventually left the UK and we started sailing, and then we got to the southwest of the UK, which was already like a good, solid few weeks. And then we decided to sail south to Spain. And basically, like, while I had never sailed before, he had sailed quite a lot before. While I had never sailed before, once you start going, then it kind of just becomes quite easy to continue. So in the end, we ended up spending 3 years. We didn't sail around the world. We sailed down to the Canaries off Africa, and then we sailed from the Canaries to the Caribbean across the Atlantic. We spent a few months in the West Indies and then sailed over to Panama across the Caribbean Sea. And then, you have to wait out hurricane season and all of that kind of stuff. So we spent 6 months-ish in Panama and around there. And then we spent about a year, I think, sailing back to Europe, again, across the Atlantic. And, after a while, you learn how to sail quite easily. So I wrote a book about that voyage. And then it was interesting because I actually spent a long time trying to get published and then just couldn't get published at all. And then I kind of gave up for a while and got back to the UK, and basically everything in my life changed at that point. And that is the point where, like, now I would say that during my 20s, like, I was being just like, life was happening to me. And while I went on this massive, amazing adventure, it was an adventure that really happened to me, and I did loads and I learned loads and it was great fun and all the things. But to just steal a phrase of yours, because that's how much I listen to you, that now I just say all the things as a normal part of my speech.
Obsessed.
So got back to the UK, and then 3 major things happened really. I had a death in the immediate family, which shook kind of everyone to their core. I got a job, an actual job that anchored me in one place. And my relationship of then 7 years by this point had effectively broken down. And that all happened in about 2 months.
Holy cow.
So when that kind of stuff happens, obviously that is really a decision kind of time. And then everything that has happened since, and this was all sort of like 2017, 2018 that I got back into the UK. And everything that's happened since, I would say, like, puts that whole trip and adventure and everything I did there into just a different world. Like, now everything in my life is so much better, and it's, I will explain why, but everything with the running, I'm not an ultra runner, I'm a trail runner, so I just enjoy running off-road really. And then I do triathlon as well, and I've recently just qualified to represent Great Britain in the Age-Group super sprint triathlon in the World Championships this year. So
does that mean you go really fast? Super sprint? Does that mean like a super fast triathlon for us dummies who don't know shit about shit? Is that what that means?
Yes, so it's the fastest and shortest version of a triathlon.
Oh my God.
So you're supposed to go really fast. Unfortunately, I'm not the fastest person in the world, but I have managed to qualify, so there's that. But yeah, it's the fastest and shortest. It's incredibly short, and so you are
yeah. Like, incredibly short is me walking from here to my mailbox. Like, let's be real. For those of us who really do. And by the way, did you listen to the podcast I did with Leah? I'm assuming you did. Leah Thorvaldsen.
Yes.
Okay, so yes. Leah's like one of my best buddies, so she would probably like dig on you right now. You guys could be really close. She'd understand everything that you're saying. But how ultra short, for those of you who are watching on YouTube, this is quotes. How ultra short is this triathlon?
Well, usually super sprint, and I'm doing the British Championships in August. So normally super sprint is about 300 to 400 meter swim, and then it is about 10 to 12 kilometer. What's that in miles? I'm not even sure. Maybe like 8 miles on a bike, and then normally about 2.5 kilometer run, which I work in miles as well, but I only run in cycling kilometers. Very confusing. But the World Championships is actually like half of that. So it is a 300 meter swim, and then in open water, and then the bike is 6 kilometers, so maybe 4 miles or something, and then it's a 1 mile run at the end. So it is one of those like really horrible kind of vomit inducing distances, because especially the run, like, it's too long to really sprint
fast, right?
Yeah.
You
cannot like pace yourself and like take it easy, because it's so short, but it's also too long to just like sprint like you're doing a 100-meter sprint. So it's that really very difficult distance. And the funny thing is, this is not the distance that I'm really adept at. The reason why I'm doing this super short distance is because I sprained my shoulder in September last year, and so my swimming basically went out the window for like 6 months. And so I thought this year I'll just focus on super sprint because it's nice and short. And I've ended up qualifying for age group world championships. So
Oh my gosh, congratulations. That's so friggin' cool.
thank you.
Okay, going back, because I feel like that probably that 2-month period where, and because everyone's going to resonate with this, like we've all had those like rock bottom moments. Mine was 27 years old, blah, blah, blah. You know that. Anyone who's listened to the podcast definitely knows that. I'm assuming your kind of moment was like that loss of a family member, loss of a relationship, starting a new job, that moment. And something that you wrote in your podcast intake form that I really loved was the fact that you said, like, you would think my story was the fact that I sailed around, well, not around the world, but in my book, you've sailed around the world. Like, that's a world enough, like half the world. We're just going to call it the world. I'm an exaggerator. We all know that. So like you've sailed around most of the world for 3 years on a boat, like you win. You would think that that would be the biggest part of this story. But for you, something that you said that I really loved was that as big as that was, the real part of the story now, that's like the best part of the story, is that you are now living very intentionally because you made a decision to do so. So kind of let's pick up right after that. So after that 2-month period, what were some of the decisions that you really had to make? And like, what was like the real momentum mover in your life to get you to where you are today, where you're very like, it seems like you're very much in alignment because you're making very intentional choices with your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And so going right back, like I was a really intentional child. So I had like loads of stuff going on when I was a kid. I wanted to be an actor, so I joined like several drama groups. By the time I was 13, I had like all these university prospectuses for different places around the country that I wanted to go to. I knew what I wanted and I really was making plans like by myself. Like my parents were like, sure, whatever you want to do, like just whatever. We don't even have an idea what you're talking about. And I was just making all these little plans. But when I got to my late teens, I started like drinking quite heavily. And then I went to university and continued drinking really heavily. And in the UK, and I know it's the same in other cultures as well, but in Britain, it's like drinking culture at university in your 20s is huge. Like it's a really, real big part of people's lives. And I basically stopped like making any decisions for myself and just basically prioritized like having a good time and partying and drinking. And I was not a good drinker. Like lots of people can handle it nicely and they do it because they enjoy it. I was not that kind of person. And so this had been a problem for me without me really knowing or being able to put it into words throughout my 20s. And then I got back to the UK and all this stuff happened in these 2 months. And then this was like October, November kind of time. And then it got into December and I just wasn't coping with anything at all, was drinking super heavily. And then I remember just like having this Christmas day at my friend's house because I couldn't face going home because of, the grief that entailed. And my, partner of 7 years had left. He was in a foreign country by this point, and everything was just completely out of my control. And so I was drinking, and then I realized that, well, that means I'm out of my control as well. And so I literally like made the decision, like I can handle this in two ways. I can continue the path I'm going and just never have any control at all and never live my own life, or I can quit. And then if I quit alcohol, then I can at least deal with the grief of the death and the grief of the relationship breakdown. I can deal with all of that as me, as a person, rather than me as a drinker or whatever. So I genuinely just quit. And that, for me, that entailed, not going out for New Year's Eve. I spent that in my room in the house share that I was renting. I didn't go out at all with any friends for a couple of months, so I wouldn't be, tempted. Pub culture is pretty big here, but I just didn't go out. And after just a few weeks of that, even then, that decision to just like, I need to start looking after myself because nobody is going to do that for me. And I'm going to stay in this like sort of small-minded living situation if I don't control my life and if I let this thing control me. because the moment you start giving your control over to something else or somebody else, like it's really a slippery slope from there. And I gave up drinking, and then, you know, within a few weeks, a few months, I just started doing other things, because I was like, well, if I can do that, which is quite a difficult thing in society, because people just, you know, if you give up smoking, people will pat you on the back. If you give up drinking, people will ask you when you're gonna, you know, when you're gonna start, when you're gonna be interesting and fun again. So I thought, well, if I can give up that, then what else can I do? So I decided that no, I wasn't going to put up with the fact that I'd written this book and it wasn't going to get published. So I made a plan and I sent it to very specific publishers that I really considered and was really intentional about. They specialized in sailing books for a start. Like before, I was like, oh, Penguin, Bloomsbury, all the big names in publishing, not being intentional at all, was just letting my ego run it. So I got really intentional about that. And then a couple of weeks after I sent that book proposal off, I got 2 offers for book deals in the same, I think the same day, actually. It was ridiculous.
No, it's not. It makes so much sense. Like this whole thing, I'm just sitting here smiling. I'm like, yep, she's checking this box. Like she's checking this box. Like, let's just kind of like point it out. Like, number 1, you made the decision that you were going to quit drinking. Number 2, you took personal responsibility for your life. Like, most people underestimate that one thing so much. Like, you have the power to decide. I say this all the time, but I think that there's moments in people's lives, whether they're 14 or 65, it doesn't matter. At some point in time, you're gonna, hopefully everyone has it. Not everyone does, but it's a small percentage, but you're gonna have this moment where you're just like, oh, fuck. Like, it's not my boyfriend's fault. It's not my mom's fault. It's not my husband's fault. It's not my sister's fault. Like, it's like all of those things happen. But like at the end of the day, this is my fucking job. And it is the best and the hardest thing that'll ever happen to most people. Because when you realize, like Kit realized, oh, fuck, like, it is my job. It is like one of like those moments in life that it just smacks you right in the face. And it's so hard because for so many years, it's, you know, most people have like, well, if this wouldn't have happened or if this would have done or whatever, but it's like literally your decision to do something different. And I love the fact that you understood, especially with your culture, you know, United States is very much the same. I'm originally from Canada, whatever. It's very much the same. I remember when one of our best couple friends, you know, we called him Hammer for so many years. He was I'm sure he wouldn't mind me sharing this. Most people won't know who he is, but he's been sober, I think, for 16 years now. And I remember the day he got sober, but I'll tell you that. And it was very much like yourself. It was like done. I remember it to a T. It was a Sunday, probably April 17th, because my husband's birthday was a Saturday. And it's been about 16 years now. And I remember the day it actually happened. But he did very similar to what you did, which was literally basically didn't see him. He got a dog, so he had an excuse every single day to go for a walk and take care of himself. He dove into his faith. That's like one of the things that he did. But he was like, for almost like a couple of years, I think he was very much like, did everything the exact opposite, stayed around away from certain people. Now he can be around people who drink and stuff like that. I mean, it's been 16 years, but that's so cool that you did that, and you should be super proud. And then the book thing, you got so intentional, right? And then the universe is like, oh, hi. Okay, cool. You're doing the thing now. Let us support you. The decision, faith, and action part. You made the decision, you took the aligned action, and now boom, it's happening. Oh my gosh, you guys, keep going. I'm loving this. Here we are. Let's go.
It was pretty incredible. And I couldn't even believe that suddenly, you know, this publisher was just like, yes, we want the book. We love it. Brilliant. Come on, let's do it. Let's do this. And I remember looking back and thinking, God, if I hadn't have made that decision, you know, this book would just be languishing in the metaphorical drawer for the rest of time, because, you know, I didn't get intentional about it. But because I did actually make that decision, all this stuff happened. So the book was launched at the Southampton Boat Show, which in Europe and the UK is a huge, huge boat show. And I share a publisher with Robin Knox Johnston, who was the first person, one of the first people to sail around the world. He did it in the 60s as part of the Golden Globe race. So he's kind of like a bit of a huge deal in the sailing world. And, you know, I'm stood there next to him and he's like chatting to me about my book. And oh my God, just absolutely incredible. And so that was September 2018. Like, what is this now? Like 9 months after like the shit had hit the fan big time. And my life was completely different. Like on the face of it, it didn't look that different. You know, I was just working like a kind of like average job, whatever. But I was back in control. And when I look back now to my 20s, I realized that from this really intentional, driven child, late teens, I just stopped doing anything for myself and started living according to what I thought other people wanted me to do, what other people wanted me to be, you know, like I was so impressionable and just gave up everything, you know, at the drop of a hat. And then when I started taking control of my life again, I kind of came back to myself and realized that, oh, I am an individual person and I can say no to things and I can live the life that I want to live. And then when I started doing that, you know, all these things started falling into place. I felt just happier in general. My book deal had come along. And then in September, I wanted to do something physical because I was quite an active child. I grew up in a kind of like amateur athletic family. So both my parents are and were cyclists and cyclocross racers. And that's kind of like an off-road type of bike race. But I was quite an active child and then I just didn't do anything. I mean, yes, sailing is active, but it was a, you know, 10-meter cruising yacht. So really like you just sit around and watch the sails and hope everything's going to be fine. Not like physical. So I wanted to do something for myself. And my sister is an absolutely outstanding runner. And she happens to be the same height and build as I am. So I was like, well, if my sister can run, then maybe I can run too. And I started running just, you know, I would leave the house really early in the morning, like before many other people were up, so they wouldn't see how terrible I was as a runner. And I could honestly run like 500 meters and then I would have to stop and walk. And I continued that way for like a couple of months because every time I got back to my house, I'd run like, you know, 3 kilometers or something, like 1.5 miles, 2 miles, whatever. So I would like run, walk the whole thing. And every time I'd get back to my house, I would feel on top of the world, even though like it had taken me ages and I kept having to stop. And then like in January the following year, I got caught on this like little canal path, narrow footpath behind these two women who were running in front of me and they were running slower than I was. And I couldn't run past them because I knew I would just have to stop and walk for a bit and it would be a bit embarrassing. So I ran behind them and just matched their pace the whole way. And that was the first day that I ran a 5 kilometer route completely without stopping. And I was like, oh, running is not sprinting. It's not the same thing. And then once I made that realization that running is actually just like basically moving faster than walking speed, then I just kept running and I ran further and further all the time because it gave me that headspace to just be, you know, outside my head and like in my body and out in nature, but also that incredible feeling that you've done it for yourself and like you get home and you're like, oh my God, look at what my body is capable of. Like, look at how strong it can be when I treat it well. And that was a real life-changing sort of realization for me.
Game changer right there, that you're doing it. You know, it's interesting that you say that. It's reminding me of the way I used to work out, which was almost like punishment. Like, obviously, you know that like I had an eating disorder, did not like myself whatsoever. And for me, working out was like, I remember times like, and this is so sad, and this could be triggering to some people who like deal with this kind of stuff, but I remember being in like full convulsions, like crazy Christina, if I couldn't work out in a day. Like, I remember it was like, I don't know, Christmas Day or Thanksgiving, and the gym was closed. And I literally couldn't even catch my breath because I was so afraid of what was going to happen. Cause that to me was like the control. It was the thing that I can control. Right. And that was like many years ago, thank God. But I like, even Nathan was with me at that time. And I remember getting in full out fights with him because I was like, I had to work out. Like I had to do it. It was like a compulsive thing because I was just so afraid of like, and I think, you know, when you're in those times, whether it's working out or eating or whatever it is, it's like, it's the control, but you're so out of control, right? It's like kind of the both. But now for me, getting to work out is like, I feel like I'm taking care of my body for the first time. It's like, I'm moving my body. So like literally, I only have two goals. Can I like be active at 85 years old? You know, can I be like my neighbor Joyce gardening at 85 years old? And like, I remember lately, you know, everyone's talking about this weight loss drug lately. And who is it? Charles Barkley. He's a big, you know, he used to play basketball, but he's now a sports commentator. And something that he said really resonated. And he said, there's a lot of fat young people, but there's zero fat old people because you don't, you know, you're not heavy and staying alive to a late part of your life. And that can be triggering to some people, but it's true. I mean, you have to take care of yourself. I know we're in this body positivity, you know, I think it's gone a little bit extreme. Like we have to physically take care of ourselves. Like it's such a blessing to be able to move your body and stay healthy. And health is the one thing that like no one can, you can't, money can't fix that most of the time. And so I really now it's just a nice flip of the script that you are able to like run and be like, oh my God, this is for me. And it's so healthy and I feel so good. And yeah, it's amazing when you can kind of get to that spot.
And it's actually, and that is exactly the same thing. Like I'm not running for speed. I'm not running for performance. Like, yes, I do these triathlons and yes, I have qualified for these events, but not because I'm super amazing or because I'm doing it for performance. I don't really I don't really train that effectively because I train in a way that suits my life, my personality, what brings me joy. Like I run for joy, and that's why I'm a trail runner. So I don't often run on roads or pavement or things like that. Like I'm really lucky I moved out to just outside of the city and I now live on the very edge of a national park. And so from my house, like it's literally 100 meters until I hit the trails and the forests and the riverside trails and all of that. And the reason why I love running on trails and up on the moorland is because I'm just bounding about, skipping for joy, because I'm just like, oh, hello squirrel, hello cow, like hello sheep. Like I'm in it for the joy because it's me taking care of my body. Like, yes, I can do some punishing workouts when I want to, but it's never because I feel like, oh, you must be fit, you must be fast, you must be like better than you were before. No, like I do these things because it uplifts me. It doesn't like drag me down. Like I'm not weaponizing it against myself, which is what I have done in the past. But now I just do these things for the sheer hell of it. And that is why when I started triathlon, it wasn't because it's like, again, like I'm not even being modest here. Like I'm not a great athlete or anything, but I found it, like I literally watched a YouTube video of an amazing British triathlete and she is genuinely world class, but she takes so much joy in it. And I found that particular part of it super inspiring. And I was like, well, I can already swim. I've always ridden a bike, so that's fine. And I have been running for a few years. So, hey, maybe I can just put these three things together, do a local triathlon, and just for the fun of it, because it's a ridiculous thing. Like you're just running around, cycling around in Lycra. Like, come on. Like it's ridiculous, right? It's just the sheer joy of it.
That's what people say about golf. Like, if you don't know anything about golf, they're like, and it really is like kind of the stupidest thing ever. Like, whack a ball into a hole. Like, none of this really makes sense. How do you know where to go? Like, what's a penalty? What's not? But now, golf, I mean, I only do it now just because I love the guys that I play with. To me, like, that's the best part. Like, I don't really go play golf just to like go play golf. Like, I like golf because of the competitiveness of it, but like the way that you kind of think about your running is the way that I think about my golf. Like I just love being out there. Like it's so hot here right now. It's like 112 degrees and everyone's bitching about it. And I love it. Like the hotter, the better. And I'm playing like dog shit at the moment, which really sucks, but I'm also just like so grateful to be out there. And anytime I just, I've got a chance to win, like I just love the action. Like to me, it's just like one of the greatest things ever. So it's kind of like the the same thing for you, right? And I want everyone to realize that. Like, I want everyone to like decide that that's the thing that they're going to have in their life, whether it be running, whether it be writing, whether it be acting, whether it be athletics. Like, what is the thing to you? Find that thing that brings you that much joy and just decide you're going to do it, whether anyone understands it or not. You know, this is kind of like a bit of a twist, but how did it go for you? And because I think that this is an important part. This is a question I get all the time, like the reaction to you doing things differently, either it be quitting alcohol, making different life decisions. Like, how did you handle that? How did that go? What's your experience?
With the giving up alcohol, that was really interesting actually, because I got a huge amount of pushback for that.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
From a lot of people were very much like, you know, when are you going to be when are you going to drink again? Because, you know, when are you going to come out drinking with us? And, you know, a lot of my friends at the time, like they drank a lot, sure, but like they didn't struggle with it in the same way that I did, I don't think. But you can't, it felt like they thought that my giving up was a criticism of them drinking. And so I'd get a lot of these questions. There was no congratulations. Like when I said, you know, this is a problem for me, like it's making me a worse person, and so giving up makes me a better person, they couldn't quite get on board with that. And they, you know, did and have now. And like now, as we've, you know, got older and got into our 30s, a lot of people actually, or they have kids or something, and they're like, oh yeah, I hardly drink at all anymore. But I also have people who have flatly like denied my experience. They're like, oh, you didn't have a problem. And I'm like, no, I did. um, you know, like if I was celebrating, I would drink. If I was commiserating, I would drink. If I was unhappy or bored or lonely, you know, all these things, or just anxious, then alcohol was the way I dealt with things. And for me, like using alcohol to deal with things is not dealing with things, you know? And because in this country, like you drink from 18, which means you genuinely start drinking from like 15 at house parties and stuff. So you never actually learn as an adult how to deal with difficult situations in your life, because alcohol is always there to help you along. But when you take away the alcohol and you have to confront these situations, you know, stone cold sober and who you actually are, that's when you start learning and realizing that, oh, I don't need alcohol to help me with this uncomfortable situation or this uncomfortable feeling. Actually, I can sit with this feeling in myself and then work out how, like, where I'm going to go next, how I'm going to deal with this thing or react to this or whatever. And giving up that kind of like crutch for me was such a powerful moment. And when, like, as the months went by, I got more of my friends sort of saying, oh yeah, actually that sounds really good, I think I should maybe, you know, cut back or stop drinking or whatever, or just, you know, any of these things and taking control. So it's like I also did a lot of like acting when I was a child, and that's what I studied at college. And then again, that was something I completely gave up in my 20s, completely gave up all acting, even though it was absolutely the single love of my life when I was a teenager. And I devoted so much of my time to it. And then when I got back and I made all these decisions and I started taking control of my life, I was like, you know what, one of the most enjoyable moments of my life is, you know, being in college productions and like coming off stage and you and all the cast, like you're so like uplifted and you feel so brilliant because you've just done this quite scary thing. And so like I just got some headshots done, like put my name out on all these like amateur sites, and like almost immediately got cast in 3 separate feature films, like the kind of like low budget horror films. It's a whole genre in itself. It's brilliant and hilarious. And I just immediately like got these acting parts and had so much fun with them. And I remember one of my friends saying, she's like, you've only been back in the country for 6 months. You haven't acted for 10 years. And now you're suddenly in these films. Like, how have you managed this? Like how? And I was like, I just made the decision. Like I just
oh my God, you're like fucking walking brand. I'm so obsessed right now. Yes, it's so true.
Like because when you make that decision, then you see the opportunities and you put yourself in a position to find and be found for those opportunities. Because if you think, oh well, I mean, I would like to do that, but like that never happens for me, or I could never do it, or I'm not good enough, whatever, then you don't put yourself forward and you don't talk to the people that you need to. And when you spot someone, like hilariously, I was looking at drama, like theatre groups the other day, And I work in a co-working space, so complete strangers are around me, but people tend to come back every sort of week. So you get to recognize people's faces. And I was like looking at this theatre group's Facebook profile to see like how, like where they were active. And a guy I was sat next to last week was cast in one of those plays. And I was just like, wait a minute. And so because I'm like just I'm out there, I'm looking for these opportunities. And so you make these connections. And so when you make that decision, then you know there's no magic to it. It's just when you make that decision, you're suddenly looking at the world through the eyes of someone who's like, no, I'm going to do some acting. Like, I'm not going to go to Hollywood or anything. I just enjoy acting here and there. So,
but you have no idea if no, don't stop that, because you don't know that Hollywood could be like the next, you know, I don't know. Is faith a part of your world? Faith, universe, woo woo, guru?
It is on some level for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So you never know. One touch of God's favor could totally change things. And because you're so intentional about it right now, right? It's like you're so in it because like you're so laser focused on it that it's like that whole thing, you know, like when perfect example. I just got a new vehicle. I have never in my life seen a matte black vehicle. Bitch, I have seen 3 matte black vehicles in my city now over the last week. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Really? I thought I was the only one with the matte black. Wrong. Because now that's where my focus is, right? And so what my focus is on, what your focus is on is what you're now finding. So you are focusing in on this, you know, acting Facebook group. And it's amazing. Yep. The guy is sitting right beside you. Like you're going to see someone else in the next week. It's just, that's just the way it works. And you guys, you could simply try this. Literally think about one thing. I had one of my clients do this just the other day. I was like, what is the most, I have dog trainers. And I was like, what's the most random dog you could ever find? And I'm like, focus in on that. I promise you that shit's going to either pop up on your internet or going to walk through your door or you're going to see it. It's what you focus on is what you find. Like it is literally science behind this. Like it is just so, I'm just so excited to get to talk to you. This is so good. So are you acting like full time now? Like what do you do full time? I don't even know what you do full time. Are you still writing full time?
Yeah, so I'm not acting full time at all. And I don't like intend to. I just like to do it for fun as like a hobby. And I just end up in like random films occasionally. No, I work full time for a company called Komoot. They are a massive German company, but we like work all over the world. It's kind of like a hiking, cycling, navigation app that you have on your phone. And this is also hilarious and kind of like just this where you put your focus, that's where you will find, you know, everything. When I was a freelance writer, so I specialize in like writing content and copy for outdoor businesses, like, you know, outdoor sports, that kind of stuff. So for several years, I was working for them as a freelance writer and loved it, loved the team, loved the product so much. It was just so great. Actually, it was funny listening to Leah's
oh my gosh, yes, I'm thinking of Zwift. Yeah, I'm thinking of the exact same story with her, but go ahead.
I love Zwift and I train on them on like my turbo in the garage with Zwift all the time. But yes, it's a very similar thing. Like I just like loved the product, was working for them as a freelance writer, which I can't even remember how I found that gig in the first place, but that felt like this piece of gold dust. And this, by the way, happened after all these decisions were made. So I had made a decision to, you know, take my freelance writing business. You know, I wanted to focus it on, instead of taking like any work I could get, I wanted to focus on getting the work in the industry that I really wanted to work in. And, you know, I love cycling, love being outdoors. So I wanted to work in that industry. So I started working for Komoot and then did that for a couple of years with lots of other clients as well. And then it got to last September, so September 2022. And I was looking at their jobs website and I was intending on moving away from being a freelancer because I found I could never switch my brain off and I could never take a holiday because I couldn't you know, I'm sure
yes,
you know.
Part of occupational hazard. Yes, I know. My husband and I are that's exactly, you've got to be okay with knowing that, like, literally my husband and I have been together 20 years. He has turned off his phone half a day. The day we got married, he turned off his phone at 10 o'clock and didn't open it until the next day. That is the only day. And so like, I totally agree with what you're saying. Like, I think there's pluses and minuses to both, but yes, if you do not know how to compartmentalize it and just say, fuck it for a minute, it's very hard to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah. And I loved it. I just needed a break, and I also needed to push myself because I got to the stage like with my clients where I I was doing like larger and larger projects, but I just kind of got the fear a little bit, I like to call it, like, oh, I don't know, you know, they want me to write that, but I don't know if I can, blah blah. So I knew that if I went in-house for a time, then it would push my writing so much more in the kind of like copywriting and content space, and doing like big campaigns and all that kind of stuff that you just can't access as easily as a freelancer. So like I just wandered onto their job page one day because this is a company that I love. So I didn't want to give them up as a client, you know. So I thought, well, maybe they'll be hiring for, you know, me full time. And they were. And it was insane. So they were hiring a brand copywriter. I went immediately to like my contact at the company, and I said, you know, is this still open? Like, can I apply? And like, I don't want to go behind your back because, you know, I'm your freelancer. And she said, oh yeah, I'll ask them. So she asked them, and they're like, oh no, sorry, we're like just going through the contract signing sort of situation with somebody else. And so I was like, oh well, okay, I guess that isn't the job for me. And then a few weeks went by, and and she got in touch with me, and she said, oh, by the way, that fell through, so you know, if you want to apply, go for it. So I, the same day, like within the same hour, I think I wrote this application, sent it off, and then within a few weeks, like they've been trying to look for this person for quite a long time, and they only want to hire perfect people for each role. Like they really respect every single person who works for them, so they put so much effort into hiring the right person for each role. So they've been hiring for a long time. And then I come along, and then I go through this interview process, caught COVID, did both the interviews with COVID, like through Zoom, like, oh, I feel so terrible. And then I got that job. So I'm the brand copywriter at Commute, which is fantastic for me because I just get to share my passion and the company's passion for getting other people outdoors into nature and realizing like how easy people can do that, and helping them find the routes and the hikes and all that kind of stuff that can help them do that.
Okay, I'm obsessed with this, and I know everyone's going to be obsessed with you. We only have a few minutes left, and I want people to know. So tell me a little bit about two things. Number one, tell me a little bit about your YouTube channel. Like, how did this come about? Because I'm just like super curious. I'm assuming, again, it was just like a decision. This sounds super fun, but tell me.
So with YouTube, that was a real like, I have so many interests and so many things that I want to do, but obviously like sometimes you have to compromise. But then when YouTube exists and your interests are what my interests are, you don't have to compromise, and you can just build your own space, you know? So I love being on camera. Like that's, you know, that's just the reality. I love the sound of my own voice. I like talking to people. I like sharing, you know, my experience and things like that. I also love running and cycling, and I'm really passionate about encouraging other people. Like they do, you don't have to be a sporty person. Like I don't consider myself a sporty person. I just like being outdoors. I'm not, as I've said, I'm not fast, I'm not athletic. I just do these things because I love it, and I happen to have got where I am today for the joy of it, and the fact that getting outside all the time makes me a better person, and it brings me the mental headspace that I need. So I thought I would combine those two things and make a YouTube channel. And you know, I enjoy like video editing. I've just taught myself whatever it is on iMovie. YouTube will teach you anything you want to know about video editing. So I thought, you know, why not? And the first couple of videos I made, like I was, you know, I enjoy being on camera, but it's you know, it's insane, isn't it? Like when there's just a camera and you in the room
And
and
you're
like,
talking to yourself. It's like the most annoying thing ever. Like, I'm so bummed that I have to do it. But like now that I'm doing it, I'm just trying to look at the camera and not, because my camera's above my computer, and I'm really trying not to look at myself because it's like the most fucked up thing ever. Like I love getting to talk to you, and I know I'm on the screen, but like talking to yourself for 2 hours, like I am like, when I do speeches, like I do like the quick keynote speech for like 15 to 30 minutes, whatever they want. And then when we do Q&A, oh my God, I could do that for 4 hours because I feel like I'm talking to someone. But like keynote speeches are fucking hard. One of my great clients is one of the best keynote speakers, like so fucking good. And I'm like, bravo, it is so hard to talk to yourself.
it really is. Like you feel like such it, like sometimes I'm like laughing to myself in my kitchen, like with a camera there, and I'm like, oh God, the cat is like, what are you doing? So it's very bizarre, but it does get easier. And now like I have to cut down my editing time because I'm just like rambling on. But I just love doing it, and I love going out there and running. It's just like me and a GoPro and like
Yeah.
passing some dog walkers and hoping they're not judging me. But like just running along and showing like how fun it is to just be outside, like after work, going for a 5K run in the woods, like whatever. And like, nobody's fucking watching these things. Like today I've got, I think, 175 subscribers, and I've been doing this for like a year and a half.
Awesome. 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 And one touch of God's favor that could blow the hell up and you never know where it's going to go. Like, yes to the yes. I'm so proud of you.
Honestly, like just when one person is like, oh, why do you only have this many subscribers? You're so good. Please keep doing it. Or someone's like, oh, thanks so much. Like you made me want to go out for a run today. That's all I need. And then I'm like, that's fine.
That's why, like, I honestly, I got your comment. So Kit is like 6 hours ahead of me, and I woke up, guys know I wake up super early, but like I got the comment, and like I don't know when my team posted it on YouTube. Jake, my great YouTube guy, he posted it or something, and then I woke up the next morning, and I've only really had like maybe a dozen comments over the last, I think we've been doing this 4 or 5 months now, but and so I woke up, and sometimes they're shitty comments, sometimes they're fine. Again, there's not a ton. And yours was like a freaking half a page of a book. And I was like, oh my God, I'm obsessed. Thank you. And I immediately emailed you back, and I was like, I would love to have you on the podcast. Cause that was just like, number one, it took so much bravery for you to actually like, send me a message, say hello, like give me your feedback, tell me that you've been listening for like over the last year, which is like mind blowing to me, because just as like you said in the beginning, just as weird as this is for you to be talking to me, it's so weird for me to be talking to you, because I feel like you know me and I've never talked to you before. So it's such a gift. So all of that to be said, you guys, I hope this gives you inspiration to comment on Kit's YouTube, comment on my YouTube, because when you're starting in the beginning, no matter how far along the journey and no matter what you think of that other person, yes, there could be assholes on the other side, but Kit and I are not assholes, and we really, really appreciate it. Please say hello. Before we end, I'd love to know, I know obviously one of the biggest decisions you've ever made is quitting drinking and deciding to take control of your life, but I feel like that's going to be the name of my SEO person has to probably use, taking control of your life. What does the next phase of Kit's life look like? Obviously, we could have done 2 hours of this podcast to get to know you a little bit more, but what does that next phase look like? What is the next decision to be made? What are you most excited about?
I think the next decision is what I'm going to do creatively now. So I've written like my first book about sailing, and then I've written books.
It's called In Bed with the Atlantic, correct?
Yeah, In Bed with the Atlantic. And you can buy it in the US as well.
Perfect. We can get it on Amazon, I'm assuming.
Yep, you sure can.
Fabulous. Be sure to check that out.
Yes, please. And so that was like, a huge deal for me. And I have written books in between, but they were like commissioned books for publishers. So they weren't my books. So I think that my next decision is to, go like plan my next creative endeavor. So the next book probably I'm going to write. And I think, it's probably going to be something about this sort of thing, like taking control of your life. And we get very hung up on the big adventures that everyone posts on Instagram and everything. And sailing was a huge adventure for me, but it wasn't me, and like now I'm living my life. And I think my next creative endeavor is going to be something along those lines.
Oh, I'm so excited. I'm so grateful that you reached out. This was literally, we've been going 55 minutes and it's just been so beautiful. I know so many people are going to resonate with it because no matter what side of the pond we're on, no matter what side of the screen we're on, I feel like people who listen to this podcast are probably feeling similar to the way that you and I did. You guys, like I always tell you, put yourself in the story. Maybe it wasn't alcohol, maybe it was social media, maybe it was the stories, maybe it was the money mindset that we didn't even have time to dive into, but it's just like making the decision, you guys. Kit, I'm so, so grateful. If everyone wants to check out your YouTube channel, get the book, I know you're not huge on social media, but tell us all where we can just find you.
So you can find me on YouTube. It's at Kit Pascoe. So that's KITPASCOE. And then I'm on Instagram, which is at Kitiara Pascoe. It's my full name, which is KITIARAPASCOE. I'm sure it'll be in the show notes.
Hopefully, it will be.
It's terrible to spell. So follow me on those places. The book, In Bed with the Atlantic, it's under my full name, Kitiara Pascoe, but you can find it on Amazon or, wherever. And thank you so much, Christina.
Oh my gosh, such a gift. Thank you. You guys, please share this with someone, because we know we're all going to need it.